Before we get started, I want you to sit with a simple question. What if your favorite pirate anime isn't just a story? What if it's a message from the past about the future you're walking into right now? What if every joke, every fight, every island is actually a coded warning about the world you and I are living in, about digital ID, AI, and a handful of elites trying to turn the entire planet into their private ship? If that sounds insane, stay with me until the end of this video, because by the time we're done, you might not look at One Piece or the real world the same way again. Also, a quick disclaimer. Everything said in this video is the sole opinion and interpretation of its creator. It is not meant to be taken as factual, verified, or an accurate reflection of real-world events. Treat this as entertainment, as a thought experiment, and as a story. Nothing here is financial advice, legal advice, medical advice, or any form of professional guidance. Like, share, and subscribe for more Angry Guy content. And now let's begin. One Piece first showed up as a manga back in 1997. 2 years later, the anime launched in 1999. Fast forward over 25 years, and it's now the most popular series on the planet. This is not some little niche project out of Japan. This is a global cultural phenomenon. And behind it all is one man, Eiichiro Oda. On the surface, he created a fun pirate adventure about a rubber kid chasing a treasure. But if you look closely, really closely, you start to see something else. A pattern, a warning, a mirror. In recent years, One Piece has stopped being just a kid's show. It has evolved into a symbol, especially among the youth, of resistance. Look at protests in places like Nepal, Indonesia, Madagascar, France, London, and even New York. You start seeing that familiar Jolly Roger of the Straw Hat Pirates, the grinning skull with the straw hat, flying not as a fandom flag, but as a banner of rebellion. Young people are literally marching under Luffy's flag as a sign of anti-authoritarian sentiment. That should tell you something. But I'm going to go further. What if I told you One Piece is not just a fictional story about pirates chasing freedom? What if I told you it's actually a tale of the past and a warning for the future? What if it's Oda's way of smuggling very real truths about power, control, censorship, and human freedom into a package the system can't easily censor because it looks like just anime? To see where I'm going with this, we have to lay out how the world of One Piece works. The planet is mostly ocean, scattered with islands. The most infamous region is the Grand Line, where the majority of the story takes place. The Grand Line is a perilous, chaotic sea route circling the globe, full of violent storms, bizarre climates, and deadly sea kings. It's where the greatest pirates sail, chasing the legendary treasure, One Piece. It's also where most of the world's secrets, riches, and forbidden knowledge lie. And not coincidentally, it's also where the world government's presence is the strongest. One crucial detail, we learned that the sea level in One Piece has been rising for centuries. Entire nations and continents are now buried under the ocean. This is not presented as a natural phenomenon. It's strongly suggested that this was a man-made catastrophe, the result of ancient weapons and decisions made long ago. That alone is a hint. Human civilization in One Piece used to be much more advanced than what we see now. You see this in the fractured technology. On many islands, people live with tech that feels like something from hundreds or thousands of years ago. Sailboats, swords, medieval-style castles, and yet you randomly see things that don't fit. Futuristic fashion, advanced scientific tools, cybernetics and Egghead, the so-called island of the future. The Straw Hats literally walk into technology that looks like it's centuries ahead of our own world. Holograms, energy systems, robots, advanced AI-like constructs. It's almost as if the current world is living in the ruins of a hyper-advanced civilization. In a world where modern smartphones don't exist, the only communication network is the world government's transponder snails, Den Den Mushi. These living devices are controlled and authorized by the system. Regular people don't have free, decentralized global communication. That alone should set off alarms when you compare it to our world, where access to the internet and communication is increasingly centralized under a handful of corporations and governments. Then you've got the advanced science, cyborgs like Frankie, Bartholomew Kuma, a modified human turned weapon, the Germa 66 family with genetically engineered children like Sanji's siblings, pacifista units, mass produced human weapons, and Vegapunk satellites, independent bodies all sharing a central mind. The tech is wildly inconsistent on the surface, but underneath, it paints a very clear picture. This world is sitting on the remnants of a civilization that was more advanced than anything people openly use now, and that connects directly to the void century. Before we get to that, we have to talk about the world government itself. In One Piece, the world government is a massive authoritarian regime formed by an alliance of 20 ancient kingdoms that defeated a mysterious ancient kingdom over 800 years ago. After winning, they didn't just take power, they rewrote history, erased their enemies, and constructed a new global order. They now govern over 170 nations, set the rules, control the Marines, manage intelligence agencies like Cypher Pol, and weaponize justice as a tool of control. At the top of this pyramid is Imu, a hidden figure nobody is supposed to know exists. Below Imu sit the five elders, the Gorosei, the public face of ultimate authority. Beneath them are the celestial dragons, descendants of the original 20 kings, living in luxury above ordinary humanity and merry joies, literally on top of the world. Then you have military leaders like Kong, the Marines, Cypher Pol, and the Buster Call Doctrine, a protocol used to completely annihilate entire islands that become inconvenient or dangerous to the narrative. Now ask yourself, what kind of threat justifies a Buster Call? What is so dangerous to a global regime that they would wipe out an entire island, kill civilians, and burn libraries to the ground? The answer is simple: forbidden knowledge. That brings us to the O'Hara incident, one of the darkest moments in One Piece and the heart of Nico Robin's backstory. O'Hara was an island of scholars. They studied the void century, those missing 100 years of history the world government has declared completely off limits. Their knowledge was stored in the Tree of Knowledge, a massive library filled with books and research on poneglyphs, ancient stone tablets that hold records from that era. When the world government realized the scholars were getting too close to the truth about the ancient kingdom and the origins of their own regime, they didn't just issue a warning. They executed a Buster Call. They erased the island, burned the library, hunted the survivors, and branded anyone connected to that knowledge as a threat. In other words, they didn't just commit mass murder. They committed memory murder. If that sounds extreme, look at human history. The idea of erasing prior knowledge and replacing it with the victor's narrative is not fiction. Emperor Qin Shi Huang in China did something hauntingly similar. He unified China, then ordered mass book burnings, and buried scholars alive who refused to conform. Historical records that predated his rule were destroyed or tightly controlled. The goal? Make it seem like history began with him, erase the intellectual diversity of the past, and establish a new official truth. You see echoes of this elsewhere. The Spanish destroying Aztec codices, the destruction and rewriting of histories after empires fall, the manipulation of knowledge throughout Europe's so-called Dark Ages humanity has a long track record of burning libraries, not just to destroy books, but to destroy alternative realities and replace them with one approved script. One Piece shows us this exact pattern, a world where history has been literally deleted, where speaking about it is forbidden, and where scholars who ask the wrong questions wind up erased, That's not just a cool backstory, that's a warning. Now let's talk about media control. In One Piece, global news is basically monopolized by one organization, the World Economic Journal, led by Big Arus Morgans. This giant birdman runs the largest and most influential newspaper in the world. He decides what stories get printed, what headlines people see, which pirates are framed as monsters, and which government actions are painted as justice. The world government tries to pressure him, but he's ultimately motivated by sensationalism and the power of narrative. He knows that information is power. Now look at our world. Most mainstream media is owned or controlled by a small cluster of corporations. Behind many of those corporations, you find the same big asset managers: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. These entities hold huge positions across multiple industries. They're not just investing, they are shaping corporate behavior through voting power and influence. When you control both the flow of capital and the flow of information, you don't just report on reality, you manufacture it. BlackRock's CEO has openly talked about a future where every asset is tokenized. Sounds efficient, sounds modern, but to tokenize everything, you need one thing above all: identity, verified identity, standardized identity. A digital ID that lets the system know exactly who owns what, who sent what, who received what. And once your identity becomes the mandatory key to access your money, your job, your healthcare, your travel, your social media, that system doesn't just know you, it owns you. Digital ID, in theory, is pitched as safety and convenience. One ID to log in everywhere. One ID to verify all your accounts. One ID to eliminate fraud. But in practice, once that ID sits between you and your life, whoever controls the gate can decide whether you get to participate or not. You don't need to drag someone to a gulag if you can just quietly throttle their ID, block their payments, shut them out of platforms, and flag them as a risk in some opaque AI scoring system. This is where AI and digital ID merge into something very dangerous. Imagine every purchase you make, every place you travel, every comment you post, every person you associate with, all linked to one centralized identity and constantly analyzed by algorithms. Those systems don't just look at what you did, they try to predict what you might do. We're already seeing early versions of this with social credit systems, reputation scores, content moderation, and pre-crime style policing experiments. It doesn't take a genius to see where this goes. You don't have to be arrested to be punished. You just get quietly disconnected, under review, suspended, unable to verify. No trial, no appeal, just digital exile. In that kind of world, freedom isn't about what the law says you can do. Freedom becomes whatever the algorithm decides you're still allowed to access. That's not freedom, that's programmable citizenship. Now tie this back to the world government in One Piece. They don't need everyone to love them. They just need enough control over information, resources, and force to make resistance nearly impossible. Newspapers, Marines, Cypher Paul, Buster Calls, all of it serves one purpose: keep people docile, misinformed, and afraid. In our world, instead of Marines, you get agencies, regulators, financial blacklists, automated content filters, and AI moderation. Different tools, same goal, and this conditioning starts early. We've been trained from childhood to accept a certain script. Go to school, sit still for hours, obey authority, don't question the curriculum, regurgitate what you're told. Then you move on to work. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for decades. Yet most studies show that the average person only does about 3 hours of actual productive work in a given day. So why are you trapped in a chair for 8? Because it's not just about productivity, it's about conditioning. We aren't being raised to be free, self-sufficient human beings. We're being groomed to be well-behaved economic units. You get the illusion of choice, pick your job, pick your employer, but most of those employers ultimately answer to the same web of investors and regulatory structures. So you're not picking freedom, you're picking your flavor of master. On top of that, individualism is weaponized. The social order that once revolved around families, shared resources, and interdependence is systematically broken down. Ideologies, movements, and cultural narratives push people away from building families and toward a life of isolated consumption and career worship. When the nuclear family dissolves and everyone is living alone, every person becomes a separate unit that needs to pay for their own housing, their own utilities, their own everything. That means more profit extracted and less resistance. Divide and domesticate. In One Piece, when the Straw Hats reach Egghead, they encounter technology that looks like science fiction, even to us. Yet the arc repeatedly calls Egghead the island of the future, and at the same time, hints that it's actually an island of the past. Because Vegapunk didn't invent that level of tech from scratch. He reconstructed it using knowledge preserved from a lost era, the Void Century. The Void Century is a 100-year black hole in history. You're not allowed to study it. You're not allowed to ask questions about it. The only surviving records from that time are carved into poneglyphs, massive, indestructible stones scattered around the world. Only a rare few people can even read them. Why would an advanced civilization choose to record their history on giant stone tablets instead of some sleek digital system? Because stone can't be hacked, erased, edited, or manipulated by whoever controls the servers. Now here's where things get really interesting. Think about our world. Cursive writing has been systematically removed from schools. Younger generations often can't read it. Meanwhile, AI systems trained on modern text and images struggle with cursive as well. So you have a form of writing that both humans and machines are increasingly blind to. What if, in some ancient advanced civilization, people realized that any digital record could be altered and controlled by the system, and they started recording the truth in a format the system couldn't read? That's exactly the kind of thing One Piece is hinting at with poneglyphs. A prior civilization left behind indestructible records that the current regime is desperate to suppress. And only a handful of descendants, like Nico Robin, can decode that history. Now let's talk about inheritance. Not just physical traits, but memory and instinct. There's a concept called genetic memory. It suggests that certain reactions, fears, patterns, and maybe even fragments of experience can be passed down across generations, encoded not as personal memories, but as biological predispositions. We see hints of this in animal studies where mice conditioned to fear a particular smell passed that heightened sensitivity down to their offspring, even though the offspring never experienced that conditioning directly. Carl Jung took this idea into the psychological realm with his concept of the collective unconscious. He argued that we share a pool of archetypes, universal symbols and themes like the hero, the shadow, the wise elder, the trickster, that show up in myths, religions, and stories all over the world. That's why cultures separated by thousands of miles and years still tell eerily similar stories. There's a shared blueprint under the surface. One Piece leans heavily into this idea of inherited will, inherited memory, and inherited destiny. The D in names like Monkey D. Luffy, Gold D. Roger, Jaguar D. Saul is still a mystery, but it's strongly implied. It marks descendants of a particular bloodline, a lineage of people who carry the will of a forgotten age. Luffy isn't just some random kid with a dream. He's the latest expression of an ancient spirit of liberation that refuses to die. You see similar patterns with races and hybrid races in the story. Buccaneers like Kuma, almost wiped out, but leaving their traits behind. The Three-Eyed Tribe with the potential to read poneglyphs. Wotan's long-arm and long-leg people, and other hybrid lineages carrying traces of ancient abilities. Oda is telling you plainly, even when systems try to erase history. Something survives in the blood, in the collective unconscious, in the stories and symbols that keep resurfacing. Now bring this back to our reality. The urge to be free, the discomfort you feel when your life is reduced to logins and QR codes, the way you recoil at the idea of being tracked every second of the day. Those reactions aren't just opinions. They are deeper than that. They come from something inside you that recognizes when a system crosses the line from order into cage. The psychopaths and Naime took this to its logical extreme. An AI system scans everyone's mental state, assigns a crime coefficient, and predicts who might be dangerous. If your score is too high, you're labeled, hunted, medicated, locked up, or eliminated, even if you haven't committed a crime yet. Freedom is sacrificed on the altar of safety. People live carefully curated lives to avoid triggering the system. Does that sound like fiction? Or does it sound like the early outlines of what we're already building? The twist in Psychopaths is that the AI isn't pure machine. It's guided by a collective of preserved human brains, elites who sit above the law judging everyone else. That's the same dynamic we see in One Piece. A supposedly neutral world order run in reality by a small group of elites whose power hinges on secrecy, surveillance, and control. And it's not far off from our world, where unelected bodies, private organizations, and corporate lobbies shape policy in the shadows while selling you feel-good slogans on the surface. Look at how the modern state and corporate world actually function. Municipalities and even entire countries are structured like corporations. The US has a long legal history of treating cities and states as municipal corporations able to incur debt, enter contracts, and operate like business entities. Citizens are effectively participants in a corporate system. You're identified by numbers, managed through bureaucratic departments, and governed by policies increasingly influenced, if not outright written, by private interests. Groups like the Chamber of Commerce, ALEC, industry-funded consumer organizations, they all have friendly, official-sounding names. They sound like public institutions, but they are lobbying arms. They sit right across the street from lawmakers, feeding them model laws, shaping regulations, and pushing corporate agendas. They exist to blur the line between public and private power so thoroughly that eventually you don't even see the separation. The same thing has happened with medicine. What we call modern medicine today is heavily shaped by pharmaceutical corporations, insurance companies, and hospital networks. The system is built around recurring treatments, not the cures. Chronic disease management is a gold mine. There's more profit in a lifetime of prescriptions than in a one-time intervention that actually fixes the problem. Meanwhile, the food supply is filled with processed, addictive substances that weaken your body and cloud your mind, keeping you too tired and distracted to resist anything. So step back and look at the big picture Oda is painting and the one we're living in. Centralized power, hidden history, controlled media, weaponized technology, a population domesticated through education, culture, and diet. A world where freedom is a slogan, not a lived reality. And then you have this one annoying factor that refuses to die. Human beings who would rather risk everything than live as pets in a technocratic zoo. That's what Joy Boy and Sun God Nika represent in One Piece, a timeless archetype of the liberator, the one who laughs in the face of gods and kings, who breaks chains and dances on the ruins of empires. It's not about one man. It's about a recurring pattern. The universal hero who carries the will of those who refuse to bow. Now, here's the part. I think One Piece hasn't fully revealed yet, but it's heavily implied. I was likely part of the ancient civilization's downfall. Imagine a prior world with full digital identity, full surveillance, AI-controlled infrastructure, and centralized governance. At first, it would look like paradise. No crime, No women, misinformation, everything efficient, but over time, the system would tighten. It would become less about protecting people and more about preserving power. Eventually, people would rebel. That clash between a hyper centralized digital empire and those who wanted to live freely could easily have triggered a cataclysm like the one that flooded the world of One Piece. When you realize that, the geography of the story starts to make sense. The shattered continents, the insane weather, the strange technology ruins, the log pose navigation system that forces people to follow specific routes instead of roaming freely. It looks like a world trying to rebuild after the collapse of something much bigger and much more oppressive. So the question becomes, are we walking down the same path? If we are, then what do we do about it? The answer is not to panic. The answer is to wake up and start making intentional choices. Say no where you can. Slow down the rollout wherever possible. Refuse to normalize the idea that every aspect of your life has to be linked to a single digital ID. You don't have to accept biometric only access to services. You can demand analog alternatives. You don't have to feed every part of your existence through 3 or 4 mega corporations. You can use privacy tools, MARI, PNS, encrypted messaging, privacy focused operating systems. You can support decentralized platforms, decentralized finance, decentralized media. You can reconnect with local economies, farmers markets, cash-based exchanges, mutual aid networks, community gardens. You can learn to store your own data, your own media, your own knowledge offline, on physical drives, on archival media, in printed form. You can explore off-grid or low-dependency lifestyles, even if it's just in phases, growing some of your own food, learning basic skills, cutting your reliance on systems you don't control. Crypto, when used properly, is one of the few tools that still offers the possibility of parallel economies, financial systems that don't rely on the same gatekeepers, not meme coin gambling. I'm talking about understanding self-custody, private wallets, peer-to-peer value transfer, and the ability to transact outside the permissioned rails of the banking system. It's not perfect, it's not magic, but it's a crucial option if you don't want all your assets locked inside a network that can be shut off with one policy change. On the digital side, you can move away from surveillance-heavy platforms and towards privacy-focused operating systems and apps. Use de-Googled Android, privacy Linux distros, encrypted communications. On the physical side, you can gradually build resilience like food, water, energy, and community resources that don't evaporate the moment some centralized database decides you're non-compliant. Is everyone going to do this? No. Most people will choose comfort over freedom, at least at first. That's always been true. But historically, it doesn't take everyone. It just takes enough people refusing to bow, refusing to forget, refusing to let the narrative be written only by the ones holding the whip. That is the real power of a story like One Piece. It slips past your defenses, it entertains you, it makes you laugh, it makes you cry. And while you're distracted by the jokes and the fights, it slowly feeds you a deeper message that centralized power always lies, that history is always being edited, that the human spirit always pushes back, and that freedom is not granted from above, it's taken from below. One Piece is not just a fun pirate adventure. It's a myth about the past and a warning about the future. It is telling you that a world government backed by advanced technology, digital control, and rewritten history will always see free-thinking individuals as the enemy. It is telling you that even if they erase records, burn books, and flood the world, the will of freedom will resurface in a new generation, whether that's in a rubber kid chasing the horizon or in real people who refuse to become data points in someone else's system. If you want to learn practical ways to protect yourself financially in this kind of world, check out Angry's Crypto Academy. It's where I break down how to understand, buy, store, and actually use crypto as a tool for independence, not just speculation. If you want to build a brand, an income stream that isn't entirely at the mercy of one employer or one platform, look into Angry's Creator Academy. I show you how to build something lean and resilient using content creativity and smart systems. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about all of this? Do you feel like Oda has been warning us in plain sight? Or do you think I'm just reading way too much into a pirate anime? Do you agree with the parallels between One Piece, digital ID, AI, and our real world elites? Let me know in the comments. Share your thoughts, your theories, your disagreements, everything. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away in cheers.